What's going on, guys? Phil here, back with another video today. It is the 22nd of July, and tomorrow makes it the 23rd, and tomorrow is release day for Perils in Paradise. And so we have a brand new expansion coming out, lots of new cards, lots of new decks, big exciting things happening. And with, this set having been, I would say, fairly well hyped up. We've had a lot of pre-release stuff. There's been some good discussion on the Reddit compared to normal, I would say. And the team itself actually made like official reveal videos with Rarin and with Day 9, and that had a decent amount of publicity. So I think overall there's been a decent amount of hype for this expansion. There's been a little bit of controversy and some anti-Reddit or some anti-sentiment on the Reddit, but I wanted to address a couple things just before the new set comes out and, kind of tie up some loose ends of thoughts I had that, might have spun off into like some smaller videos, and I just kind of want all my thoughts before the new set releases tomorrow just in one place. So about a week ago, there was this article by Screenrant put out. It's an interview with two of the executive designers on Hearthstone right now, and talks about things like the future of Hearthstone, how it's evolved over time, how the design philosophy has changed, where the team thinks that the game itself fits in to the TCG market, stuff like that. And it re-answers a question that we already knew about. We already knew the answer, but if you were not aware, the team is almost always 3 expansions out on release. So like in development, they already have at least the thematic ideas for the next 3 sets. They typically, as a set is releasing, the next set is kind of finishing up, and then the other 2 are getting designed along the way, and it allows them to stay ahead and make sure that they constantly have a business running, that they have things coming out, there's new ideas, they have a good overall interpretation of what a year will look like rather than going set by set. And that got reconfirmed here. There's people speculating that after the release of this set, there's going to be like big Blizzard news. And of course, whenever there's going to be big news and communication, people are worried for the worst. So people are worried that the amount of expansions that we get per year, or the team is going to get cut, or something is going to go downhill with this communication. But honestly, at least there's nothing in this article that really gives us any insight into anything bad coming up. And this just kind of reinforces the answers that we already had. So there's, two sides to each coin. You can look at that as a good thing, like, hey, they're still being consistent with their answers. This still seems to be the philosophy. Or you could say, oh, of course, it's the same reused answer because they don't want to say anything new until the new communication comes out. I like to be more of an optimist. The game is 10 years old. It still is making money. It still has players. It's still getting new updates, new modes. Lots of time and effort and focus put into it. So I don't see the big news coming as like the sign of the end times. That seems to be a little bit of a narrative going on some of the, community forums, Reddits, things like that. And I don't agree with that. And I think that the fact that they're doing press leading up to the new set, they wouldn't be trying to, push out marketing for a game that's going to be dying. They would just let it die off in peace. But anyways, moving on to the actual article itself, the summary kind of covers a little bit of what I want to talk about. Honestly, this article, it only takes about 5-10 minutes to read. Very good article. But the biggest thing that I'm going to be focusing on is this point right here. The game's success can be attributed to its constant evolution, its unique digital features, and their passionate development team. So we'll talk about everything in summary in a second, but I do want to go a little bit point by point with some of the questions that they asked. And so let's see where we want to start. The future of Hearthstone. This question relates to why the game is doing as well as it is, why it's lasted 10 years, and if there's anything going forward that we, should be planning on seeing kind of used in the design philosophy. And the biggest thing that I think stands out in this answer is this guy right here. One of the things that's been a great strength of ours, like a pillar of the game, has been the surprise and delight leaning into the digital space, and then what makes us unique from a paper genre game. The surprise and delight is something that I think is, it's like a term that if you get some super analytical guys to read this interview, they're going to complain that this is a non-answer. Guys, this is the answer that everyone is looking for. The last couple sets have been very fun, very whimsical, very like, almost childlike. Remember, Hearthstone started as baby's first card game. It's always been really good with light themes. Obviously, some of the bigger expansions at the beginning were more Warcraft themed. They were more serious. Naxxramas was pretty serious in tone. Whispers of Old Gods had a lot of, darker elements. But especially in the more recent sets, there's a lot more in-jokes. There's a lot more referential art. There's a lot more just color and, like, pops, And this idea that things should be vibrant, things should be in your face, things should always be happening, translates not only in theme for the sets, but also into gameplay, where we are soon going to talk about board churn and how in every game of Hearthstone, you're not, slowly building up a board most of the time. You're not building resources. You're not sticking one threat and hoping it stays so you can stick another threat right behind it. Every turn, there's a lot of back and forth, and that is by design. The explosivity of each turn, like the fact that there's a lot of resets on who's ahead in tempo, who's actually winning a game, who has things on board, who doesn't. It presents new difficulties, new challenges every turn, rather than you kind of go into a match knowing exactly what you're going to be trying to face down. If you think back to Classic, and you think back to Classic like thinking at a very, very high level, you basically knew exactly what cards every deck was running. There was not as much generation or random stuff or comeback tools. And so you could essentially math out an entire game in a perfect world of like, if they get their perfect draw, I get my perfect draw. Here's how every threat gets answered in a certain way. And it could be, aside from your draw order, you could have it be very, very consistent. And that is, that was fun for the time. Everyone was learning. No one did that, That's not actually practically applicable. But in theory, the game was much simpler, much easier to solve. And now, because of the change in design philosophy, where things are just so much more swingy, so much more impactful, is that different? Yeah. Is that a bad thing? No. I believe it's actually one of the things that keeps Hearthstone alive. It's one of the things that separates it from other card games. If you want a card game where you're not every game, you're going to have to think like 7 turns ahead, it's kind of nice to have that. And Hearthstone fills that role great. And it fills that role really well because it accepts that that's what it's doing. It's not lying to you saying we are the most strategically in-depth, like, we're not chess, bro. We're playing fucking Hearthstone. We're playing with Magic. We're playing with Warcraft characters. I just want some fun shit happening. I want to see explosive things go on. And there's always, there's got to be a balance between exactly how kind of silly and stupid you let your game get. But I don't think we've ever crossed into the territory where our theming is just so outlandish that I can't see it ever being in a Warcraft property. I appreciate that we still are bringing in Warcraft characters and Warcraft references, and we're taking characters that weren't really that big a deal in Warcraft and making them our own big characters in Hearthstone. Like, it's really well done, and the team seems to understand and have a very, very, I can't think of the word. I guess I'm going to go with focused. They just have a very like pinpoint idea of exactly what they're looking for from their game, and I appreciate that they are confident enough in their decisions to let the game change, let the game become different over time, because that's what's going to keep us around for another 10 years. I think that, like I said, this is something that a lot of people might just overlook as just some fluff words in an interview. Dude, this is everything. This is everything for this game. On top of that, leading in digital space, I think Hearthstone does that better than almost any digital card game. I think that Discover is an incredible mechanic that cannot be done in paper, obviously. There's a lot of deck manipulation and shuffling of things. There's the new Immortal Prelate, the Amalgam that's coming out in the next set. That's not going to be able to be done on paper. There's the shuffling of bombs for Bomb Warrior and for twist mode for Dr. Boom, things like that that you can't do in a paper game. And those are the kind of things that are super, super exciting. That's why there's a lot of mana cheat, because mana cheat's a lot more difficult to track and deal with in a paper game. If you're trying to play Halvaria in Twist on a real, with real cards, dude, every turn is going to take a million years and you have so much random generation that it's never going to work in the first place. But it fits perfectly into what Hearthstone is. This Twist season is incredible, and it's so sad that not too many people seem to have experienced it or noticed or cared, because it's such a great sign for the game that they were able to essentially switch the complete design philosophy of the game. They've been able to maintain it and have let it evolve slowly over time to appear in things like Standard. And then to double down on the idea that this is what we're doing, this is what's going to be great, they made a mode with characters that do things specifically because, like, they can't be done in paper. Like, Twist is just the best. It might be the best mode of any card game ever that I've played online. It's the most unique. It does so many things right, and it's so many things that you can't do without your digital space. It's just such a good use of all the business, like, product little pinpoints of, like, why are we special? It hits every single mark, and it's so fucking good. I adore this answer from Nathan. What a perfect way to talk about this. Moving on a little bit, they talked about some other foregone modes. What happened to them? Were they a bad decision? Trying to get a little bit more of like a serious question, like, hey, you had this duels mode that kind of got torn apart. You had this mercenaries mode that is not even in the game anymore. Like, whatever happened to classic? And it's a short and sweet answer, but essentially they're talking about focus. You have to remember that at the end of the day, is Blizzard a big company? Yeah. Is the Hearthstone team a big team? Who really knows for sure anymore? It used to be a really small team, confirmed. Who knows exactly how many people are working on it now? But the important part is there's real people behind it all. There's a lot of work that goes into the game that we're playing. It's a very, very polished product. As much as everyone wants to complain that there's bugs sometimes, and when they do patches, things break, that's how code works, man. You got to remember that they're a business, they're real people. Sometimes you have to make decisions because you're a business. There still needs to be ways to make money. You only have so many resources, so you have to spread your resources to the most important projects. Does it suck that, if duels was your favorite mode and now it's kind of gone, is that really bad for you? Yeah. But if it wasn't for the fact that they have so many stats and so many numbers to tell them, hey, I bet you only like 5% of our player base is even playing this. At this point, we can't afford to be putting resources into it. I understand, man. Does it suck? Yeah. Is it unfortunate? Sure. But is it telling you that the game is dying? No, man. It's just you gotta refocus sometimes, and that's totally okay. That should be expected. So pretty solid answer there. And then now, this was the answer where they regave how development works. Not the biggest deal for me. We already talked about that a little bit. This is where we get into the core gameplay philosophy in Hearthstone and how it's changed over the years. And this particular sentence about board churn has gotten a couple people pissed off on some of the Reddit discussions that I've talked about. People are misinterpreting this to say that your board does not matter, that they're making a game where it's not going to ever matter. You're never going to be able to build up anything. Every turn is just going to be a swing. It's all going to be responses. And I don't think that's the right way to look at this at all. I believe that the nature of having quite a lot of board churn is really, really evident in a lot of the Twist decks. And honestly, like I just said, I have a great time with all of the Twist decks. Having this philosophy be what you're doing sets Hearthstone apart from anything like Magic, where it's almost always a slow build-up. Legends of Runeterra was a fairly slow game. Trying to think of some other even big card games at the moment. And, I mean, I can't even speak on it enough because I don't know anything about Yu-Gi-Oh! But I guess Yu-Gi-Oh! Exists, but I would imagine that it has nothing to do, it doesn't do anything quite like this. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is so unique in its own aspect that, like, it's hard to bring into these types of conversations, I think. But the point of the matter is that explosive reset, kind of swingy turns, having there be a new puzzle in each turn. I really particularly enjoy that, honestly. I think that it's a great direction for the game to be going, and the fact that they gave such a succinct, good answer about why that's what they're doing, I think is a very confident showing. It's a very, very good response. They also addressed Tourist, which has gotten a little bit of flack for being a repurposing of dual class cards, and they do that. They just are upfront about it. Of course, this is a new way to play with multiple class cards at the same time. We've done that before, but they were limited, and now this is, even particularly more limited, but it's a cool way to do it, and it's a more balanced way to do it, where in the future, they're not going to have to future-proof worrying about dual class cards and shit like that as much. From a design perspective, Tourist is I think it's an incredible implementation of dual class cards, and it having mechanics that like looking back in Perils of Paradise, we're going to know Tourist is now this mechanic from this set. We're able to use the cards from this set, and that's all that we have to worry about. I think that's a good way to have it be. It'd be very difficult to implement dual class cards again in the same way that they did last set with new combinations, because then your collection is going to become very, very, convoluted, and they've always tried to be very simple in deck building. And so this seems like a very simple implementation of doing dual class cards again, and I think it brings a lot to the format, honestly. I think it's going to be a good time. That's essentially everything that I wanted to talk about from this. There's a little bit of stuff about how much do they talk to streamers. There's things about doing solo content in different formats. Not something that I really particularly, focus on, but one that I felt just deserves some mention because it's good that it got asked, and it's good that it had a decent response and a genuine response. What the fuck happened with Dragon Druid and the emergency ban, right? I was very against the ban. I talked pretty mad shit about how I'm pretty sure this is a bad way to go about this, and it seems like the recent situation is unique, and this will not be the way they do things going forward, because it came up so late into the cycle and actually caught them off guard. And I'll be honest, this deck caught me off guard too. If we would have been on top of our stats, we would have noticed it maybe a week earlier than like the rest of everybody else. But this deck came out of nowhere. No one was playing this. Nobody seemed to care. And then just within, honestly, like a 4-day stretch, it became the most popular deck in like every format, in every rank. It was out of nowhere. It was almost unprecedented. And so I totally understand now that they had to do something quick to try and at least get rid of the deck for a while. It also impacted their events, which they were doing, and so you don't want things to overlap with something being super, super oppressive and ruining a good time, especially a limited time thing. So this gives me a little bit more hope about the fact that they know what they're doing. They're not really into these super rash decisions. It takes a lot to full ban a Hearthstone card, and Splish Splash Drake was not going to be ban worthy, worthy of a permanent ban at least. So I hope that from this, you're able to get a little bit of insight into how the design team works, and I just hope that with this we have a little bit more of a, real picture of what we're going into as consumers into this new set. The game seems to be in a fine place. They got caught off guard with one situation right here at the end that left a lot of players, a little bit salty, a bad taste in their mouth, but they're addressing it, they're dealing with it. There's been plenty of new events in the last month or two to try and keep things, spicy, in lieu of a better word, while, the new set comes out, because the meta's been a little bit stale. And they're trying their best, man. I really, truly believe that the Hearthstone team right now is doing everything they can. I think the game's in a good spot, and I don't see it going anywhere anytime soon, especially if they continue to buckle down on what they think really makes us stand out. The explosive turns, the fun sets, the great theming, the exemplary presentation. Like, I was always someone who is just into a game for mechanics. I don't care if you make me an ASCII text adventure game. If it's the best ASCII text adventure game ever, I will still play it. but there is a lot to be said for the fact that Hearthstone consistently has been the most polished in presentation card game on the digital market since its release. I don't believe there's anything that matches it in that terms at all. And as long as we're able to, keep moving forward at essentially the same kind of speed and pace and quality that we've been at, I think the game is going to be around for another 10 years easily. So thank you guys for watching. Appreciate you taking the time. If you have any thoughts, comments, concerns, or anything you want to talk about, feel free to drop it in the comments, and make sure to like, sub, and all of that jazz. And we'll see you next time.